where I rented an office. Inside that co-working space was a coding boot camp, which happened to be on my floor by coincidence. So every few months, I would meet a couple dozen new sort of wannabe coders, people who wanted to break into the coding industry. And then towards the end of that 3-month period, they would look for jobs. Most of them would end up finding jobs. And then it would start all over again for another 3-month cohort. And one thing I found pretty curious about some of these job hunters is that they wouldn't even entertain certain opportunities if the job wasn't an exact fit for what they wanted. So, let's say you wanted to be a back-end developer working on a Node Express stack with a MongoDB, had to be back-end. And, there was an interview for there's an opening for a C# developer, not quite a good fit, but, maybe there's a good opportunity to learn. Well, a lot of these people wouldn't even look into it. And they would actually just not have jobs for a while. They would actually go unemployed for several months before, finding an alternative. And sometimes the alternative wasn't so good. Might have been working as a TA in that same boot camp, which is a typical thing boot camps do, is they hire their own students to be TAs to keep their employment rates up. So I always thought that was kind of strange because my mentality is so different. My mentality is more like, it's not the exact opposite where it's just take whatever you can get. That's not a good mentality either. But it's to be open to a lot of things and to explore all opportunities to see which ones might be a good fit. Most of them won't, but to see which ones might be a good fit and pursue the ones that could lead to better things down the road. Now, I always thought that was kind of a strange mentality, waiting for the exact perfect job at the entry level, because the leverage is so far against you at that position. Especially now, as I record this video, it's February 2019. For an entry-level developer, software developer, the market is just way oversaturated now, and the leverage is truly against you. It really is a buyer's market now at the entry level. And so, to sit out and hold out for the best, perfect job, if you're in a position where you can do that, God bless you, do that. I encourage it if you can do that. For example, now I turn down a lot of work because it's just not a good fit. It's either the pay is too low or the expectations are unreasonable or whatever. But I'm on year 7 of my career. Like, I can do these things now. When I was on year 1, I was not that way at all. I just took almost whatever came along. And I was thankful for it. I was grateful for the opportunities. And so oftentimes on the surface, they didn't seem like a good fit, but they might lead to better things down the road. I'll give you one concrete example. I had connected with an individual who wanted to learn how to make iOS apps, and he was willing to pay me by the hour just to teach him. So, twice a week we would meet in my apartment or his apartment, depending on whatever. And for about 2 hours, I would show him whatever I knew on the iPhone app, iPhone development, and then he would pay me for those 2 hours. It might have been like $100 or whatever, not that much money. On the surface, it might seem like, well, this doesn't seem like a very good long-term plan. Like, this is just sort of beer money. It's not a good opportunity. And really, it wasn't. But after about 3 months of that, this particular individual had gotten a role as a QA tester at a Brooklyn dev shop, which managed major contracts with big companies, big media companies like ESPN and Disney and stuff like that. Well, Disney owns ESPN, so whatever. So he had then recommended me as a iOS dev because they were looking for an iPad engineer. And then based on the strength of that recommendation, pretty much I got the job. And that really kickstarted my career. That really got me going, because that particular role put me on a path to meet more and more good clients and get better work, get better exposure, and get better at my craft, really get better as an engineer. So, opportunity A led to opportunity B. And I just sort of parlayed one into the other. And they didn't all work out that way. In fact, most of them didn't. Most of them were dead ends that kind of just went nowhere. And I understand that. But it's not like I could predict which one's going to go which way. I probably could better now. But at the time, I really couldn't. And so I just sort of took whatever I felt was a decent shot at moving on to something better. So I always thought that was kind of a strange mentality amongst junior devs, to just sort of sit out and wait for the perfect job. I see a lot of that amongst college students today too, where if they study one thing and they can't get a good job in that particular field, they just don't take any job, which is really kind of it's not a really good mentality, especially in today's market. So, another example, a more abstract example might be like, I'm just looking at my notes right here. So, you might be a back-end developer, or you might want to become a back-end developer, but all you see on certain job boards are front-end roles, and so you just completely ignore those. It's really not that. Again, that's really not the right mentality. What you want to be looking for are roles that could eventually evolve into your ideal job. Maybe they won't start out that way. In fact, they almost certainly will not. But maybe down the road, they can evolve into what you consider your ideal job. So, sticking with that particular example, you might start out with a front-end gig, just doing some basic JavaScript, jQuery, Bootstrap, nothing crazy, and at the entry level, and then you might be doing that for 6 months. And if you're doing a really good job, and you're really conscientious with your work, you're self-guided, you don't need tons of direction, and you're getting the work in, you're getting it done, people are going to notice, and somebody on the team above you will notice and say, hey, this guy is getting it done, why don't we try him out in this situation and see what they can do in this role. And that might be more the role you're looking for. That might be more of a back-end role or a DevOps role or whatever you want to do. You get the idea. So as you're looking for jobs, finding the perfect job at the entry level, especially today, it's going to be very, very difficult. You really just shouldn't count on it. The market is way oversaturated. And unless you're just a super prodigy, building rocket ships and stuff like that, it's just not going to happen at the entry level. What you should be looking for are positions that can eventually evolve into your ideal role, and see if there's a clear pathway to becoming the type of developer you want to be. So again, sticking with that front end example, well, you probably realize by now a lot of the front end stuff is kind of morphing together with the back end. You got JavaScript on the front, JavaScript on the back. You've got React on the front, but a lot of server-side rendering on the back end, whatever. So, maybe you can get an entry-level role on like a React dev team. And if you do a really kick-ass job on that, they might want to put you on some stuff on the back end if it's a Node Express application, right? So it can eventually morph into the kind of role you want. That's not going to apply to every job opening out there. For example, if there's an opening for like a developer, entry-level developer in a PHP/WordPress shop, and like that's all I do is just like spit out, WordPress templates for small businesses and local businesses. That's probably never going to become the kind of job you want to do if you want to be a full-stack engineer. If you want to eventually move on to full-stack, React, Redux, whatever, that'll probably never happen in that particular company. So you still have to use your discretion. But to write off most entry-level jobs just because they don't already fit your actual idea of an ideal job is really foolhardy in my opinion. And it's getting more and more so because the market at the entry level is already saturated, and it's only getting worse. So take that for what it's worth. Another thing worth understanding is that you want to be in a position with the right people. So as you're looking at jobs and roles, it's not so much the role as it is the people you're going to be working with, and that's on several levels. With the right people, you're going to accelerate your learning. You're just going to learn a lot more. Your skills will level up much, much, much faster. So going back to my original example of the Brooklyn dev shop, I got lucky with that because of my client recommended me. And to this day, that's the strongest dev team I've worked with in my entire career. And I just learned so much in that 6-7 month period. I learned more in that amount of time than in the preceding 2 years. And then sort of having their stamp of approval made it much easier for me to move on to other assignments, other gigs. Kind of gave me that social proof that I needed with other dev shops and startups and whatnot. And I got just better and better roles as a result of it. So a lot of that was just based on who I was working with in that particular situation. So you want to take that under advisement too. You want to really think about who are the people that you'll be working with and working for, and are any of those people doing what you eventually want to do? And if that's the case, then that's a good situation to be in. You really want to evaluate it along those lines, more so than how's the job, how much vacation do I get, how much do I get paid, stuff like that. At the entry level, you really don't want to think that way. It's very distasteful to think that way at the entry level. You're not in a position to make those kinds of demands, unless you're just a genius. And again, there are people who can do that, but you got to ask yourself, are you one of those people? Maybe you are, maybe you're not. But I'll tell you this much, I wasn't. I didn't have that kind of leverage. I couldn't throw my weight around as an entry-level dev. I had to take what I was given, and a lot of it was just crap. I took a lot of shit work, a lot. And these are things I don't really get into because I don't really think people are interested in it. But I think people don't understand how much shit work I did. Just shit work. Contracts that suck. Some of them just didn't even pay. Checks that bounced. Most of them just went nowhere. Companies going nowhere. Just startups that crash and burn. Just shit work. But then every now and then, I would find a good one, and that would just level me up right away. Just go from level 1 to level 10. Just right away, because I landed in a good spot. And then I don't really do those shit jobs anymore. That whole phase lasted about 1.5 years, I would say. But that 1.5 years was difficult. It was difficult. I did a lot of I'm not going to get into it. You get the idea. But again, I think what people tend not to acknowledge or understand is just how much of that I did, just how much shit I had to do. And at the time, I was like happy to do it. I was like, yeah, great, give me more. Like I want more. Just I want to get better. I want to find more opportunities. I want to see what I have to do to get that next level. And I think in my last video, my first job video, that wasn't a shit job, but it was a situation that really kind of, kind of fell on my head. Like I didn't handle it well. So it was a learning experience. I got much better as a result. That Brooklyn dev shop came a few months after that. So, I was able to recover and pick up okay, and then I was able to just move on to the next thing. So anyway, going back to my original point, don't focus so much on whether or not a particular job is like the perfect job for you. It's understand that at the entry level, things are getting harder and harder and harder. your leverage as a developer is getting worse and worse and worse. It is not 2012. It is not 2013. It's 2019. Things are very different than when I broke into the industry. So you have to not take whatever you can get, but take whatever you think can become what you want. And that's it. And don't, you don't want to pass up opportunities just because at the time it's not the perfect one. So hopefully that makes